male sperm health is very quickly declining. There's a reason why you're not getting pregnant, and it's not just your age. Women are still super scared of getting pregnant. There is this underlying pressure that we have to move quick. It's really important to pause and to think about like, okay, well, if I'm struggling to get pregnant, why is that?
What are the root cause of infertility?
The mental and emotional part is so underestimated.
Stress, I assume?
If you are not in a safe space and your body doesn't feel safe, it is programmed for survival. It will not prioritize you having a baby. In order to look at a fertility case, you need to look at someone as a whole person, but you also need to look at their health history. Not just the physical factors, but also the mental, the emotional, and the energetic.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Wellsome. In today's episode, we are talking about a topic that is very close to every woman's heart, I would say, and is a topic that has increased a lot of focus, especially in the latest year, which is fertility. In today's episode, I have the pleasure to have with me Sandra. Welcome to Wellsome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Sandra is a functional fertility practitioner, and she's helping women in enhancing their fertility and help women to get pregnant. Sandra, first of all, what a lovely mission you have.
Thank you so much.
I love it, and I'm so glad that you're here on the podcast to talk about this topic because, as I said in the introduction, I think it's very close to every woman's heart. And it's, I would say it's a game of health, but also it's a game of emotion, and there's a lot involved.
Yes.
So we need more people like you.
Yeah.
So let's start from the beginning. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that you have a story, and I'm sure that you started this amazing journey because you have a story. Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you, how did you become a functional fertility practitioner?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me.
Of course.
Yes, I do have a story. And I think from every kind of, I would say every practitioner, coach, you know, a lot of people in the wellness industry, they kind of come into this calling or purpose because they've been through some sort of struggle or pain. And I know we've talked about this before. And to be honest, I never ever imagined that I would be in the fertility space or working in the fertility space. I have been a women's health coach and practitioner for almost 10 years now. Wow. And I kind of got into that work because of my own journey with, you know, debilitating period pain growing up. I had a lot of gut issues. I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism from the age of 16. I, went through so many doctor's appointments, gaslighting, a lot of questions growing up, constantly asking the question, why? Why is my body going through this? Why am I experiencing this? And that curiosity led me to discover functional medicine. And that was kind of like a saving grace in my mid-20s. And it completely changed the way I looked at health, I thought about health, and it also validated what I was always feeling, that there was always a reason and that your body was communicating to you. And it was just that nobody ever understood or could explain to me. Yeah. So I kind of deep dived into research and into certifying myself and getting all the certifications and becoming a functional coach, functional medicine coach. And through my work where I was, working with a lot of women with hormonal imbalances, a lot of gut issues, and through that work, getting to the root cause of why they were feeling this way, a lot of the women were actually conceiving, or they were coming to me because their goal was to eventually get pregnant. Yeah. So naturally, as that kind of journey unfolded, I was helping a lot more women in the fertility space, kind of, without really focusing on fertility, let's say, originally. And then I became a mother, and I think that was kind of the turning point for me because I had my first baby when it was during the pandemic. And it was a very, very difficult birth and also postpartum period. So that completely changed everything for me. It was a huge transition in my life. And of course, with everything, all the stress of COVID. And then at 6 months postpartum, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And it was, needless to say, one of the most difficult periods of my life. And coming out of that, I felt like I had another calling to do something more, and I created my business, my program, which again kind of reinforced this whole idea of really giving women a place for them to feel seen and heard and validated, and to kind of help women become more and more in tune with their bodies. Yeah. And through that, through that experience, I started growing this business, and then in the middle of all of that, I miscarried. And I was, gearing up to get pregnant for another baby, and I miscarried. And that was really the turning point, because I realized that while I felt like I was healthy, there was a lot of things internally, the residual stress that I had been carrying from, postpartum and the pandemic and, starting a business as a mother and the transition into motherhood and all of these things, postpartum depression that I went through, thyroid cancer, like all of that. And then also I felt like, I went through this period where all the health things that I had been implementing for so long kind of stopped working. And I realized that a lot of the emotional stress and the fears that I had and the anxiety around having cancer again or getting pregnant again or living through trauma, birth trauma again, kind of stopped me from getting pregnant. And I felt when I miscarried, it was a sign from my body to pause and to really look at what's happening in my life and what do I need to change. And that was both physically and mentally and emotionally and energetically. Yeah. And then I had my second baby, and it was a complete night and day difference between the pregnancy, the postpartum. My bond with my baby was completely different the second time around, and it just really opened my eyes to what true preparation does in how different your experience can be and how much stronger and more resilient you are as a woman going through those experiences and transitions. So very long-winded answer, but this is really my journey. Here we are, my journey.
Here we are, super interesting. And first of all, I'm so impressed from your journey in general, because you went through a lot. But as I said to you when I got in touch with you and you were explaining me a little bit about your life, I was so impressed how you turned, I would say, a disadvantaged situation or in a situation that was maybe not impacting you in a positive way into not only in a positive way, but into your purpose. Yeah. And wanted to help even more women in this, because I feel there is a lot of unexplained emotions behind it. And sometimes I feel that we are not talking about enough how giving birth before, during, and after means for a woman when it comes to physically and mentally, I would say. Yeah. But let's start from the beginning. First question, that is actually the most, I would say, automatic question people maybe they have in their mind when they are listening to this podcast is, now everyone is talking about unexpected infertility, and that it's so difficult to, be pregnant and get pregnant. What are the root cause of infertility? What are the main ones?
So to go back to kind of what unexplained infertility is, so unexplained or unexpected infertility. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that can contribute to fertility struggles. It's never really one thing. Yeah. So it could be, it could be a male factor issue. It could be a condition like you have, whether it's endometriosis or PCOS. It could be nutrient depletion. It could be the fact that you went through pregnancy already and, you're struggling for a second, third, fourth pregnancy because you had severe depletion in your first pregnancy, you never repleted your nutrients, your body went through a trauma of birth. You might have undetectable health issues that are kind of going under the radar, whether it's chronic inflammation or whether it's gut issues or whether it's hormonal imbalances that are all the time. Women hear everything looks normal, but even at a suboptimal level, this could stop pregnancy from happening. So there are many, many, many things that we see in practice that could stop a pregnancy from happening. And I always say that fertility is not separate from your health. They are not two separate entities. working on your overall health and addressing overall health factors is what contributes to fertility. And I think one of the most underestimated parts of fertility struggles in general is actually the environment. So like how our world, modern day world, has changed, and how generations past have not struggled with fertility as much as we have.
Yeah.
Because of our different lifestyle, our different, the products that we're using, the environment that we're living in, the air, the quality of the water, the food, all of that stuff has changed.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like the mental and emotional part is so underestimated. So, the narrative of fear that is like consistently being heard from women all over the world around the pressure to get pregnant by a certain time. You'll after the age of 35, your fertility drops off a cliff, and then, that's it, done. You have no chance but to do IVF. And this constant fear mongering that women are being driven to, this narrative, is what's also creating lack of self-trust, lack of intuition, lack of belief in themselves that something so natural, like we as women are programmed to reproduce, right? So if it's not working, we always have to ask the question why. And I think that's what we've stopped doing. We've stopped investigating, and we just automatically push women into this vicious circle of fear, anxiety, lack of trust, and over-dependence on interventions, where I'm definitely not anti-intervention, but I feel like so many women are driven into this prematurely. They don't need it. And that's also extremely draining for them. So there's multiple factors. And I think in order to look at a fertility case, you need to look at someone as a whole person, but you also need to look at their health history, their family's history of fertility struggles. You need to look at chronic conditions that they're experiencing. You need to look at their partner, which is, again, an equation that never gets addressed properly. True. And they are half of the equation. You need to look at not just the physical factors, but also the mental, the emotional, and the energetic. Conception and pregnancy and giving birth to a baby is energetic. And if you are not in a safe space and your body doesn't feel safe, it is programmed for survival. So it will not prioritize you having a baby. It will just stop, that whole process.
You were talking about PCOS, and you were talking about hormones.
Yeah.
And I know that when it comes to fertility, but in general, as a woman, I know how big of a role the hormones are playing for us. Is there any specific hormone imbalance or issue that you see in women when they're trying to have a baby, but maybe they have some limitations? What is the connection between hormones and fertility?
Yeah, so hormones obviously are a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Hormones are responding to things that are happening in your outside world, in your environment, in your body. So they're chemical messengers. It's never really the hormones problem. It's what's causing the hormone to be imbalanced.
Yeah.
Some of the most common hormonal imbalances that we're seeing are thyroid issues, always. Like very, very, very...
A lot of women with Hashimoto as well.
A lot of women with thyroid issues, Hashimoto's, which is the autoimmune thyroid condition. And usually they are undiagnosed or missed in, conventional or standard testing, because we test very superficially the thyroid, which is just the thyroid stimulating hormone, or a TSH. That's like the standard practice. Yeah. But that doesn't tell us anything about what the thyroid is actually producing. True. It doesn't tell us anything about the antibodies or the autoimmune picture. And so we are constantly seeing in so many, I can't tell you how many clients I've worked with that were struggling to conceive and had undiagnosed or misdiagnosed thyroid conditions. And as soon as we addressed the thyroid, they were able to get pregnant. Many of them had Hashimoto's that were never tested for it, women who went through years of infertility and then all of a sudden found out that they had Hashimoto's that was never, looked at. And the thyroid in general, there's a huge sort of difference between how conventional medicine looks at thyroid ranges versus what a functional practitioner does in terms of ranges. We look at ranges very narrowly, whereas conventional medicine, the ranges are very wide in testing. And that's because you're basically being compared to the overall population. And the overall population is getting sicker and sicker and sicker. So we don't want to be in a normal range. We want to be in an optimal range. And the optimal range for fertility is much narrower. So anyone kind of outside that range, you have a risk of miscarriage, implantation failure, all the early pregnancy loss that we are hearing very commonly happening nowadays that women are sharing about. And also developmental issues in babies. So it's really important that we test properly the thyroid. And that's like number one that I see in practice. Number two is progesterone insufficiency. So women with lower progesterone levels, ovulation issues, higher estrogen issues. So they're having issues detoxing estrogen, or they have higher levels of estrogen in the body. And there are so many things linked to why that can actually happen. And then the other one is elevated prolactin. So prolactin is a hormone that we tend to see. So it's essentially, it goes up in pregnancy and obviously postpartum, because it helps us produce the milk.
The milk, yeah.
But if it's elevated outside of pregnancy and postpartum, then there are many factors as to why that can be elevated. And if it is elevated, it can impact your ovulation, it can suppress your ovulation, it can impact fertility, it can impact implantation, it can impact a lot of things in the fertility picture. So we have to look at why prolactin would be elevated, and it could be elevated for a number of reasons. And then the other one would be metabolic health, so your insulin. We see a lot of women who have metabolic dysfunction, they have very high blood sugar, or they have they're borderline pre-diabetic, and they are not being screened for their fasting insulin. Not a routine, check in standard testing. But again, any sort of metabolic dysfunction is going to impact your ovulation, your egg quality, implantation. So there's a lot of things that kind of go hand in hand. And a lot of things that standard testing doesn't really look at.
Let's say that maybe for the women that are listening, let's say that there is a woman in our community that is trying to get pregnant. So in terms of lifestyle, nutrition, and overall preparation, what do you normally recommend your clients to do?
So we normally, everything that we do, we start off with data. We start off with testing, because...
Which is super important to do.
We have to understand what your body needs. And I think now in the age of AI and, all this information that we are hearing, one of the most common things that I hear of, women that come into my practice is, I am so overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. Should I do this? I've done everything, but do I need to do everything? And so more is not necessarily, better, right? So we really have to start with testing, thorough testing, to understand what your body actually needs. What are the specific nutrients that you're lacking? What does your nutrition look like? What would your supplementation look like? All of that has to be targeted and intentional, because we see so many practitioners that are it's just template medicine, right? It's like 50 supplements, do everything generally. And that doesn't work for everybody, right? Everyone needs personalized care. And that's really what I'm trying to pioneer in this kind of new narrative that I want to create in the fertility space, because it has to be personalized, it has to be science-backed, it has to be based on your data, your body, your numbers, your health history, all of that plays a role. And so as much as there's general information, I would say it's hard to say, because it really depends on the case. But we always say that it's not just about nutrition and supplements. For me and in my practice, it is much more than that. And I really emphasize and advocate for the mental and emotional side of this journey, because again, I think more and more women are experiencing chronic stress. They are, there's a lot of this fear and anxiety that I mentioned earlier, and nobody talks about it, right? It's just like kind of hidden. It's taboo to speak about. Women feel like they're failing. Women feel like their bodies are failing. There's a lot of resentment in relationships, and we see that in couples that we work with, because a lot of the male, and not to their fault, this is just how we were educated, that it's not the man's problem, right? And so a lot of men come into this journey thinking like, well, I don't need to do anything. Like I'm fine. The doctor said I'm fine. but they have loads of issues, right? So I think it's a lot about education and awareness and really looking at everything from a 360 view, because there are so many playing parts and moving parts to a fertility case. Yeah. And we can't just reduce it to a few markers or, you know, a little bit of nutrition or, you know, a prenatal. That's not it. It's much more complex and nuanced and layered than that.
What are the biggest misconceptions that you see in the fertility space in terms of education? So maybe things that maybe the health, in general, the health brands or authorities or coaches are saying that it's completely wrong, or maybe people that are influential, or from, I don't know, maybe misconceptions that us women, we carry and we think it's true, but then it's not.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions is the age conversation. Yeah. And I'm truly trying to change that because, I mean, just to tell you, alone in our practice, like a lot of the clients that we work with are in their late 30s, early 40s. And some of them, this is their first time getting pregnant. So we as women collectively, we are shifting the age of when we are starting to think about children because we are prioritizing different things in our lives now. So naturally, women are getting pregnant much later. Yeah. So, but yet we still have this fear factor, this narrative, again, that's like, as soon as you turn 35, that's it. You know, your chances are over. It's not going to be easy for you. And yes, age is a factor. Absolutely. You know, we can't deny that. But there is so much research out there now and such exciting research that is showing us that there are way more modifiable things that we can look at and we can do to protect our egg quality, to have better chances well into our 40s to get pregnant and have really amazing outcomes. And I think that's super exciting that the science is starting to finally catch up with what we've been doing in the functional space. And I'm really excited to kind of see that happening. But I still think that there is a lot of education in the age. You know, women are still super scared of getting pregnant. There is this underlying pressure that we have to move quick, you know, everything, it has to keep moving. Whereas I feel like it's really important to pause and to think about like, okay, well, if I'm struggling to get pregnant, why is that? Yeah. Let's investigate 1, 2, 3 and find someone who can actually do that for you, who can ask the right questions, who can do the right testing, who can play detective, because there's a reason why you're not getting pregnant. And it's not just your age. It's not your age. Yeah. There are many other things that we can obviously look at. So that's definitely one of the biggest things. And, you know, in practice, we've helped women 43, 44, 45, and our oldest client was 47. Wow. First baby. So for me, the whole age thing, like I am really trying to debunk the age factor, because age is absolutely a factor, but our approach to getting pregnant into our 40s and our 30s and our 20s is completely different. Someone in their 20s, how we approach that is very different from someone in their 40s. But it's absolutely possible. And that's what I'm trying to like instill in women.
That's amazing. You brought an amazing example. I'm very positively surprised. Yeah. And I'm surprised because a lot of doctors, they're telling you you're late.
Yeah. You're too old, you're too late.
You're too old, you're too late, which I found it very, very shocking, especially because as a woman, to hear these, let's say, these stories or this affirmation, I think it's very hurtful.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's where like a lot of the fear and the anxiety comes from, is because of this constant narrative that we hear from professionals, from doctors, from specialists. And I think, you know, I've heard shocking things that my clients have told me that their doctors have told them, and it's really upsetting to...
Yeah. For example?
You're too old. You will... one of my clients was told, this 47-year-old was told, you can forget about having children. And when she got pregnant, she told me, like, you know, I'm just shocked because, like, everyone told me that it was not possible. Yeah. And here we are. Yeah. And she's halfway through her pregnancy. So... Yeah, I just, you know, there's some really cruel things being said to women, and it's just really demoralizing. no wonder women are constantly fearful of their age. So that's definitely one of the biggest misconceptions. The second misconception I would say is that IVF is the answer to all your fertility.
Yeah, tell me more
issues.
about IVF, and for the people that maybe they don't know and they're listening to us, if you can actually guide us through what is IVF and what is it, why people are talking about IVF so much, and what's your opinion about it?
So IVF is it's a remarkable tool. I am not against IVF or intervention of any kind. In some cases, it is absolutely life-saving and, can really help couples.
Yeah.
The problem that we're seeing now is that very similarly to what birth control was in our, teen years, has now become IVF.
Yeah.
So birth control used to be the solution to every problem you had hormonally. And now it's like the same narrative, but for fertility, from the IVF space. So women and couples, as soon as they have been struggling for more than a few months, 6 months, maybe a year, the first thing that they're told is, we don't know. Go do IVF. Quick fix. And so what the conception is that IVF is the answer to all your fertility struggles. And that's completely wrong. Okay, so yes, IVF is an amazing tool. It can be really helpful in certain cases, but it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
And IVF is not a miracle. Like it's not like a quick fix or a magic pill or anything like that. It is a tool that we can use, but it will not work if your body is not ready for it.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that people don't know that IVF has a huge failure rate. Like the failure rate of IVF is above 70%.
Oh, wow, that's so high.
It's very high. So the average woman and couple who goes through IVF the first time, the failure rate is extremely high. So what happens? They're told then to just keep trying. Do a second round, do a third round, try again, keep trying. And what we've seen in practice, we've had clients come in who have done 6 rounds of IVF that have all failed. Wow. And then they've ended up getting pregnant naturally. So it is just a testament to the fact that, again, going back to the question of like, why? Why are you struggling to conceive? IVF is not the answer to that. You are not lacking IVF. You are lacking something that is happening. There's a barrier that is happening blocking a pregnancy. So whether it's from your end or whether it's from your partner's end or whether it's from both ends, we need to make sure that we identify that. And once that's identified, that doesn't mean you can't go do IVF. That's fine. But then you can increase your success rates by about 40% if you take the time to actually prepare your body.
Yeah.
Because you could have a perfect embryo and it will still not implant.
Wow.
And we see that all the time. Like grade A quality, best quality embryos. And, they're told you have an amazing chance of getting pregnant, and then it continuously implantation failure. And why is that? So many reasons. Inflammation, infections, male factor issues. Obviously the male factor doesn't impact the implantation, but it can, of course, impact the quality of the embryo.
Yeah.
And then if there is implantation failure, we have to look at the gut, we have to look at the thyroid, we have to look at the immune system, we have to look at nutrient status, we have to look at the hormones. Like there's so many things that we need to look at.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we see that in, functional testing and a lot of the things that we do in practice. So we have helped a lot of women go through IVF. And like I said, it's a remarkable tool.
Yeah.
But, I recently had a conversation with a client. She has been working with us for almost 2 years now. And she came to us last year and she was struggling with secondary infertility for over 2 years. So she just couldn't get pregnant naturally. She kept having recurrent failure, recurrent loss. And she went through multiple IVF cycles that failed. And there was just like a whole trauma around, well, I already got pregnant, so why isn't it happening this time? I already have a child. What's wrong with my body? And we worked together so hard. And she still ended up doing IVF. But the entire sort of journey for her changed when we did all that preparation and when we were able to really get her body into a really good place.
Yeah.
And she's currently 21 weeks pregnant.
Wow.
And one of the things that she told me was, I wish I had found you sooner, because I am 100% sure that you could have changed the trajectory of my journey much earlier. Like I could have prevented, I didn't have to go through all of these IVF cycles if I had found you sooner.
Yeah.
And it made me so emotional, because it's amazing that, I'm so happy for her that she's pregnant, and whatever way you get pregnant, I always wish everyone success. But I think we need to come out of this, again, this vicious cycle of like IVF is the answer to everything.
Yeah.
And that misconception really needs, like, it's just all about education and awareness and doing the work, whether you're planning on naturally conceiving or doing any sort of intervention.
How do you normally guide clients in actually taking care of the fertility part? I know that you have a method that is so integrated into, functional medicine, and you have the aspect of the lifestyle, of the environment. So I'm sure that you're taking care of different aspects. So for example, let's say I'm a client who wants to get pregnant and ask for help in terms of fertility. What do you normally do, and how do you guide them through the process?
So the first thing that we do is I usually have like a discovery call with that client to kind of understand, what their case is, if our program or working together is a good fit, because there are obviously some very complex cases that require a lot more, out of scope stuff from our program. But in general, I look at their case, and I think one of the most eye-opening things that we do in that sort of beginning discovery session is for me to see their testing and look at, their story. So they tell me their story.
Which type of test do you normally ask to?
So we ask for a very comprehensive lab work. It's a whole list of, I think, over 26 blood markers.
Yeah.
I think the standard, tests that we see from clients is usually about 6 markers. So it's like your FSH, your LH, your AMH, your TSH, and antral follicle count, maybe blood sugar, iron, not really ferritin, we don't see very often, and it's very, and like estradiol and progesterone, but not always at the right time of the cycle.
But I would say tests that they can easily do if they go to a clinic here in Dubai.
Yeah. It's testing that they can easily do. So it's just baseline blood work, but of course ours is much more comprehensive of what we look at. So essentially, I ask them, like, just send me your testing. I want to see kind of what you've done so far. And I can already see patterns that are happening that were never addressed.
Yeah.
And that's like 9 times out of 10, just through blood work alone. Obviously, there are some cases where we need further testing because like their blood work actually looks really good. So it's, asking the question like, okay, well, there must be something deeper. So the first thing is that discovery call. We look at the patterns and the case and everything, and we kind of look at what their health history is, what their symptoms are, and how all of that ties in together. And that's really my favorite part of this work, is to kind of connect the dots for people and seeing them feel reassured to be like, okay, now I understand the picture. And being able to like zoom out of their story and look at the patterns, the connections, how the system impacts their body systems impact fertility, I think is really eye-opening, and it's one of my favorite parts of this work. And based off of that, we obviously build a protocol around what their body needs, what we are finding in lab work. I work with a team of 4 other practitioners, and kind of together we are both conventionally and functionally trained. So, we have that amazing experience of marrying both sort of types of approaches together. And so, based on that, we work on, like I said, nutrition, targeted supplements, lifestyle factors, and then we do additional testing. So we always do functional testing in the program. A lot of our clients are seeing gut issues. Like that is probably the number one thing that we are seeing repeatedly is fertility struggles are kind of tied with the gut. And
wow, that's so interesting.
Yes, it's one of the most common things that we're seeing in practice. And again, it's one of the most missed factors in a fertility picture.
And also, this is something that no one would ever imagine.
No one talks about it. No one looks at it. So what we're seeing is dysbiosis. We're seeing a lot of parasites. We're seeing a lot of H. pylori, which, studies confirm that these things cause miscarriage and are linked to early pregnancy loss. So that is like science backed. So if there are high levels of H. pylori, it's no wonder that, you are struggling to conceive and you have recurrent loss.
And H. pylori, for example, can be silent for a while.
It can be silent for a while, exactly. And, the tests that we do, it picks up on even low levels of H. pylori, which is still a factor that we want to work on. And, depending on the levels, depending on the case, all of that stuff, we kind of put together a protocol. But we're seeing a lot of gut issues. And that's kind of universal anyways. Yeah. But there is no difference and no separation between gut health and fertility, because your gut health is, where we absorb nutrients. It's where we break down our food. It's where a lot of our inflammation sources sourced in our gut. It's where our immune system lives, like the majority of it. And it's where we, digest and metabolize hormones, like eliminate estrogen. So it has an impact on everything.
Yeah.
And if we are not looking at the gut, we are ignoring a massive piece of the puzzle. And so this is why I very, very much advocate for testing the gut microbiome, also because we are seeing, it's not just about getting pregnant, it's also because we're seeing babies born with chronic conditions. Yeah. And, the mothers are passing on, microbiome issues that are getting passed on to their babies. And we're seeing eczema and psoriasis and a lot of skin issues and gut issues and chronic conditions in babies.
Yeah.
So it's not just about you getting pregnant. It's about what are you passing on to the next generation. And that's really essentially the end goal, is that we want to build a healthier generation of human beings.
Absolutely.
So it's transgenerational. And that's where we really need to kind of think outside of the box of, I just want to get pregnant. No, it's much bigger than that.
Absolutely. It's a bigger picture.
Exactly.
When it comes to miscarriage, in this case, what actually affects miscarriage? I know that there are multiple factors, but guide us through what actually can cause miscarriage, and how can you also support women in this phase, because it can be very, very traumatic for a woman.
Yeah.
So how do you support in all of this?
Yeah. So we work with a lot of women who have gone through recurrent loss or, even one loss. For us, the system tells you that you need to have 3 miscarriages before they pay attention to you medically. And,
that's so sad.
And it is a really terrible kind of standard of practice. So for us, 1 miscarriage is data. 1 miscarriage is enough to say you need to sit down and look at what's going on. Yes, miscarriages are common. They can happen. And there are genetic factors and chromosomal issues that are out of our control. But a lot of things that contribute to miscarriage and early pregnancy loss are things that we can actually work on. So one of the most common things is male factor issues. So there is a very big connection between male factor sperm issues and sperm quality, like things like DNA fragmentation, so DNA damage to the sperm, morphology issues, so in the shape of the sperm, and those have anything like that can actually contribute to you miscarrying. So it might not even be a problem with you. It might be a problem with your partner, and you don't know, because standard practice, again, doesn't test for those things adequately. So this is why we highly advocate for men getting full comprehensive testing. Yeah. And we see a lot of issues in guys. Wow. It's one of the most common things that we're seeing now is a lot of more male factor issues than women.
So you see more infertility in men than in women?
Yes, a higher level of fertility issues stemming from the male factor part.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, that's one of the very common things that we're seeing. The second thing is anything related to your immune system. So any sort of autoimmunity, even things like, endometriosis, which is now classified as essentially an autoimmune condition.
Yeah.
Gut issues, again, linked to your immune system. So any sort of immune dysregulation or anything that is throwing off your immune system, or your immune system is overactive for any reason, that can also contribute to recurrent loss. So we have to look at, what's contributing to immune problems. Again, very missing piece of the puzzle until quite late into the journey.
Yeah.
So that's very common. We see that all the time. Another one would be clotting factors. We see this quite a lot, and that's obviously through blood testing. You can look at that. Things like MTHFR, so gene mutations, MTHFR. So if you are unable to, break down things like folic acid into folate, right? A lot of women can't actually have this gene mutation and are unable to use that folate. So this is why kind of bypassing all of that by giving women L-methylfolate or a more absorbable form can already help a lot of cases. And a lot of women do test for MTHFR and it comes back that it's present.
Yeah.
So again, another very common thing. And also I want to say that something that we see very commonly, and I know I'm sure, a lot of people will listen to this and be like, this is so woo-woo, but I genuinely believe, and I think a lot of people will agree with me in the fertility space and also women who have kind of gone through this journey, that birth trauma, emotional dysregulation, any sort of trauma that you've lived through, women hold that in their womb, in their hips, right? In that whole region. And so we have to look at that. We have to look at birth trauma. How was your previous pregnancy? If you are struggling to get pregnant a second, third, fourth time, did anyone ask you what your delivery was like?
Also, I assume also some kind of abuse. Maybe
Absolutely.
They can impact the fertility.
Absolutely, yes. We've had several cases of abuse. And again, nobody addresses that.
Yeah.
So how do we actually work with people who have gone through loss? We have to address everything. We have to do thorough testing, always, always. We have to look at the data. We have to look at the male factor. We have to. If you are not thoroughly testing your partner, you are missing a massive part of the equation. It's 50% of the equation.
Yeah.
That isn't being, missed. We have to look at trauma work. Right? So any sort of trauma, big trauma, little trauma, chronic stress, emotional dysregulation, fear, anxiety. One of the things in my journey that I felt contributed to my miscarriage was the fact that I was scared to death about getting pregnant again because I replayed a traumatic thought pattern that was like, you're going to get pregnant, you're going to go through postpartum depression, and then you're going to get cancer.
Do you think I don't want to say auto-sabotage yourself, but do you think that maybe your mental thoughts and your mental state impact actually?
Absolutely. I genuinely believe that the thought patterns, our belief systems, the noise that we are constantly hearing, like you're too old, you can't do it, you won't have a chance to do it, the trauma that women go through, birth traumas, all of these things leave an imprint in our bodies.
Yeah.
And if you've ever read the book, Your Body Keeps the Score, if you haven't, I highly recommend that whoever's listening,
absolutely
they do.
You have to put your hands on it because it's amazing.
It's an amazing book, and I think it really spells out exactly what I'm trying to say here, is that you may feel like emotionally and mentally you are past that stage, but your body holds on to trauma.
Yeah.
And so if we are not doing the work of somatic healing, therapy of all kinds, energy healing, all of these kinds of things. And I bring all of that into the program, into how we work with women and couples, because if you're not addressing that, again, you're missing a massive piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely.
So we have to look at fertility differently, and we have to look at the woman as a whole. What has she gone through? What has she lived through? What is her day-to-day like? What does she eat? What she doesn't eat? What is her body like? All these things. So that's why it's so layered. And
what is actually the biggest surprise when it comes to education and information? The number one piece of information that impacts fertility, or it's a big innovation when it comes to fertility, when you read it, you were like, wow, I would have never imagined that.
That's a very good question.
Maybe also related to the male fertility part.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the male factor is very quickly going downhill. I mean, male sperm health is very quickly declining. And there are many factors to that. Obviously, our modern day world, our environment,
stress, I assume.
Stress,
yeah.
A lot of things that men are using. Alcohol, a lot of men drink a lot of alcohol. Alcohol, beer, for example, is very estrogenic. Like that is contributing to higher levels of estrogen in men. Yeah. So we are seeing fat deposits in the wrong places. We are seeing lower levels of testosterone. We are seeing impacted sperm health. Same thing with like plastics and the products that they're using, these estrogenic mimicking, compounds in like plastics and BPA and things like that. So very high toxin levels in men. And I think that's one of the leading factors of sperm decline. So it's kind of shocking how much the men are playing a role, and a lot of men that we see in practice are smokers.
Yeah.
Vapes, cigarettes, like 20 cigarettes a day, and they don't think that that's going to impact anything because it's not part of the equation. They're fine. They did a small sperm analysis and it looked okay, and they were told everything looks normal. So the pressure again is put on women. So that's definitely something that is shocking, and I think more women and more people need to be talking about this. But I think one of the kind of newer shocking things that is crazy, kind of that all this new research that is coming out, which again, like I said, is so exciting, is that we can actually preserve and protect fertility well into our 40s. And I've seen that in practice, and I think it's amazing. And I've seen other, professionals in this space do amazing work with women well into their 40s. But to see it in practice is something that is like incredible, because again, it's like unlearning what you've consistently been told is true, that you're too old and it's not possible. And I think it's just amazing to be able to prove that narrative wrong. And the new research that's coming out to show us that truly, yes, egg quality is important as we age, but there's actually way more important things that contribute to the preservation of egg quality. And that's like mitochondrial health, like your cellular health, oxidative stress, and looking at things that age your cells. So lack of sleep, stress. So as we age, we need to be very intentional with what we are doing in terms of nutrition, in terms of our supplements, in terms of how we care for our bodies. And I think as I feel like I relate to this a lot more because I'm in my late 30s and I'm, next year I'll be 40, and I'm seeing that shift personally. And what I was able to do when I'm 25, I can no longer do that. You know, we have to be much more intentional.
Yeah.
And I think that that's amazing that intention is now science-backed.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting to see that like science is catching up. And I love to see that.
I completely agree with you. And Sandra, I would like to close the episode by giving our women a little bit of motivation from you, that you saw that it is possible to get pregnant even in the late 30s or early 40s, because I feel that as women, we need to hear it from, from a practitioner, from someone that is into the field, in order to believe in it and feel better and don't be scared. So if there is a positive message that you would like to leave today for our women, what would it be?
I think it would be to kind of like come back to yourself and remember the power that you have as a woman. Like, we have this incredible innate ability to bring new life into this world. Like, that is a miracle. And I feel like that power has been stripped away from us continuously, not just in fertility, I think in women's health in general.
I think society really wants to sabotage us in many ways with different things.
Yeah. So I definitely agree. And I think that we just have to remember that this innate ability, we have to keep coming back to that. We have to trust our intuition, and we have to not let, again, the narrative, the standard practice, like strip that away from us. And I feel like the most important thing, and whether that's in your everyday health or whether it's through a fertility journey, is stay curious. Like curiosity is really what helped me personally, find a lot of things in my health and like open my eyes to a lot of things that I wouldn't have ever been able to learn. But I always knew intuitively that there was something that I was missing.
Yeah.
And I see that in so many women, but they don't trust themselves. They don't back themselves because of this fear and this anxiety and this pressure to perform and do things at a certain time and be pregnant at a certain time and at a certain schedule. And, I think that there's a lot of power in pausing and taking a moment to reflect and investigate and not feel so pressured and rushed. And the benefit of that is huge.
Yeah.
And I feel like when I did that personally, it completely changed my outlook on a lot of things, and it changed my pregnancy. Like I had an incredible pregnancy after that. So it's a very heavy journey, and I know that the emotions of this journey are a lot, and it's some women have suffered and couples have suffered through a lot. But I think it's always about coming back to yourself and finding the right support and the right care and really bringing back the human touch to this space, because it's just increasingly become reduced to numbers and age and data, which is all really important. But we've lost that element of humanity in this whole space.
Yeah.
And to be able to listen to someone and hear their story and help them feel seen and heard, that does wonders for their psyche, for their mindset, for their body's receptivity to this whole journey. So I think that is my biggest advice.
Sandra, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you so much for bringing on the podcast such a valuable amount of information for women. I'm very grateful.
Thank you.
And if people would like to work with you or just want to follow you, where they can find you?
The easiest place is on Instagram. You can follow me at Sandra Sharpe Wellness.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of amazing content there that you can go through. And please reach out to me. If you did listen to this podcast, I'd love for you to give me your feedback or for me to hear what you thought about it.
I love that. Guys, if you have any question for Sandra, please comment down below and let us know. Do not forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.